You're watching NewsX. Prime Minister Modi's victory for the third term brings many expectations from the people of the country. This is because he has not just been the country's strong leader in the past 10 years, but has been considered as an innovator too in his own right. From doubling the income of the farmers to becoming a global leader in semiconductor chip manufacturing to achieving a 10% growth consistently in all quarters. It's all a part of Prime Minister Modi's big mission for the country now. We'll discuss this with our guest. Joining us on the show is Professor Madhav Nalapat, Editorial Director of the Sunday Guardian. Gautam Mukherjee, Senior Journalist, also joins us on the show. Pathikrit Pine, International Affairs Expert, with us on the program as well. Last but not the least, Major General G.G. Dwivedi, Defence Expert, also joins us on the program. Professor Nalapat, we'll begin with you. Well, the past 10 years have been instrumental in making India, showing India what it is today. They have been instrumental in assuring a sense of growth, which is not only organic, sustainable, promising, but also at the same time has penetrated the last corners of the country as well. In your opinion, how would you envisage the next 5 years of the country? We already know the drills that the Prime Minister and the other economists of the country have also projected, which is, of course, India is going to be the third largest economy. That is a few years away. But what else do you think is in store for India when it comes to the Prime Minister and the way he has worked in juxtaposition to what he has done in the last 10 years?
Well, I'd like to say, Vineet, that he is getting his third term. Modi 3.0 is coming in a matter of less than 48 hours from now. And that was essential for him to ensure that the growth path of India was set on course for the double-digit growth that he is now publicly talking about as being the hallmark of what he's working to achieve. This is something which will be music to the ears of every member of the BJP, every member of every other coalition partner, and if I may say so, especially to reformers of renown such as Chandrababu Naidu and politicians of great practicality such as Nitish Babu. So there's been a lot of chatter that, oh my gosh, the majority will go, BJP will not come to power. And I'm not surprised, because the entire election was fought on one plank, either Modi 3.0 or UPA 3.0. And we have already seen now, for example, that the INDI alliance, the Congress party, has basically suggested that Rahul Gandhi should be the leader of the opposition. Had they secured the majority, the suggestion would have been that he should be the prime minister. That would have been UPA 3.0. Now, instead of that, you've got Modi 3.0. And in my view, it will be a stable coalition. Clearly, there will need to be some course corrections, some changes in settings, for a simple reason that handling a coalition is different from handling a unitary party. And I think from all points of view, that is a good thing, because you have more people you will need to take along, more views you will be listening to, and it will be a collective effort with shared collective responsibility. So I think, frankly, what has happened, I mean, it may look that, the BJP has not got a majority, but the reality of the situation is 1991 reform was brought by a Prime Minister, Narasimha Rao, who did not have a majority. Mr. Vajpayee did not have a majority when he went forward with reforms significantly. So a majority for a single party is not needed. A majority for a government is needed. And in that, this government has a comfortable majority beneath.
All right, General Dwivedi, you've been a part of those programs where we have, very astutely enunciated how India and its defense requirements have changed over the last 10 years. How our status as an importer of defense equipment has, completely transformed over the last 10 years as well. And, before the Prime Minister took over this third term, in the last 2 quarters or so, this aspect of our economy was also rendering and reaping fruit, which the likes of which we haven't seen in the past. In your opinion, as somebody who deals with defense challenges and futures and projections all the time, where does India go from here?
Well, Vineet, when we look at the national security, we don't look in segments, we look in a larger perspective. And therefore, I think the security, when we look at, we also look at the geopolitical picture and also how the threat perception, the new challenges that have emerged. And no gainsaying doesn't require security experts, but India's security challenges have compounded over a period of time. And especially with this start of this new millennium, I think our challenges are more complex and more uncertain. Therefore, when we look at the security perception, two things are very important. First and foremost, security cannot be outsourced. That means we cannot be dependent on the other nations for security requirement. And secondly, today, if you have to win the wars, you have to be at least as well equipped as the adversary, if not better. Gone are the days when you fought with whatever you had. Now that will not hold good. So to that extent, India had made effort even in the past to be self-reliant, but that did not yield result for a number of reasons. And two very important reasons were, first and foremost, you must have very clear doctrines and national policy, how you want to defend yourself, what type of war you want to fight. Until that is in place, you will not be able to get the security dynamics right. To that extent, I think Prime Minister Modi definitely gave a impetus to be self-reliant. But then defense self-reliant cannot be in isolation because it has to be contingent to the total capacity of the country. If our country industrial base is not sound, you cannot have the defense production also on the different footing. So therefore, I like to make three very important points. First and foremost, the Atmanirbharta initiative taken by Prime Minister Modi are very well in the right direction. Secondly, not needs to be done in three areas. First and foremost, we got to focus a lot on R&D because until your research and development is not in place, you cannot be self-reliant. A simple figure, China spent 2% of its GDP on R&D. We don't even spend 1%. So first, second point, our budget. Our budget is basically around 2% of GDP. This needs to be escalated because until you have enough money put in, you'll not be able to get the self-reliance. And thirdly, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We got to bring in our private players, our MSMEs, and I teach a course in IIMs on entrepreneurship. Unfortunately, not many MSMEs have come into the production of the defense equipment. That's where we need to open it out and ensure that we do hand-holding and de-invest or divest from the PSUs or DPSUs. And my final take is that defense needs highest priority. It cannot be politicized. Whole nation must back up the government, present government, to ensure that we are self-reliant. And the final word is that until country is safe and secure, it cannot progress because first and foremost, you have to have secure environment. Only then you have the economic ecosystem that works. So therefore, geopolitics, geoeconomics and security go hand in hand. I am very confident that present government will be able to handle it to the best of the ability.
Right. Gautam, in fact, if you look at history, if you look at things from a retrospective angle, a number of these coalition governments that have existed in the past, they have ideally not been able to produce the kind of economic fervor that we're enjoying at this point in time. But considering the track record the Prime Minister has shown in the last decade, do you think that this coalition of sorts that we have at this point in time, is going to change all of that?
I believe so. I think the Prime Minister, from the word go at his address at the BJP headquarters, has made it clear that I am not going to slow down. I am going to stick to my priorities. I am going to improve the defense manufacturing capacity in India. I'm going to get on with my economic agenda and my other initiatives to make a strong India well on its way to 2047, where we expect to be a developed country. Now, this election has created a situation in which a small number, I stress this, a small number of allies have to be catered to. This is not Bajpayee's coalition, where he had 40 people, 40 different parties to balance. And still he managed to go nuclear. Still he managed to do the golden quadrilateral. Still he managed to be popular with the people as well as his political compatriots and co-partners. That was a very different personality. Here, I give every expectation to Mr. Modi being a good negotiator. He gets on with half the world's leaders. There is no reason why he can't get along with a handful. As far as the opposition goes, while it has grown mightily to 233 seats, it's really a bunch of people who do not have much in common besides wanting to unseat Modi. This is as far as they've got. And after this, they don't know what to do. They're hoping to poach somebody or other. But you can't really do much poaching when 240 is in one hand. And there are basically two large partners and then a bunch of small ones. There is every expectation in my mind that the BJP will actually grow without poaching anybody from across the aisle, because there are some independents and some uncommitted people, approximately 20 of them, of which 7 are independents. I think many of these people could drift towards the BJP, and that makes it even less likely that the opposition can do anything. Now, what is definitely restricted, and I have no expectations of those going forward, is anything that requires cooperation across the aisle. That is not going to happen, because that is what the opposition is waiting for, to pounce on this government and teach them a lesson. So as long as he goes on things that work on majority, all the legislation that work on a majority, he's all right. If he wants to do something that needs the cooperation of, say, 2/3, that is not going to happen in this 5 years. And it would be a waste of time and create just an opportunity for humiliation of this government should Mr. Modi go that route. With 25 years of experience as Chief Minister and Prime Minister, I'm certain he knows all this. But the point is that I've described this 233 as a kind of purgatory. You are not quite in the fires of hell, but you have no power. You are hanging there, and you will keep on hanging there for the 5 years. If at all you can hang together, that's something. But, the only hope is in the states. And here, the debacle that the BJP has had in UP because of mismanagement, tickets given to the wrong people, not listening to Yogi Adityanath, who is the incumbent and has won 2 terms. If this isn't fixed, then the BJP could lose the next election, the NDA could lose the next election, and there could even be chaos midterm. Remember, now the Samajwadi Party is going to go for the kill when the elections come around in UP, and nobody can properly expect to win this country and run it without UP. Now they're down to 37 seats. This is a disgrace. The way that UP has been handled is a disgrace and must be fixed. Heads must roll. The responsibilities must be fixed. This cannot be just brushed under the carpet. If it is, then you've weakened yourself, and the so-called Chintan, Baithaks and so on are of no use, because you don't want to do anything hard and you don't want to fix your faults. Beneath.
All right, Pathikrit. Well, India's ascendance was, very astutely captured as well as glorified what happened during the G20 summit as well. The story of the election, we all know, has turned out in favor of the Prime Minister. But, there is a lot of work that is not yet finished. There is a lot of work that is still, persistently in attention of the Prime Minister himself. We don't know whether he's going to be here, he's going to be able or, would want to be here for a fourth term. But what are some of the things that you feel that require conclusion in the next 5 years to what the Prime Minister and his party has started?
Vineet, first of all, I believe personally that Modi with a marginally less number of seats than the majority mark, marginally less number of seats, might be more lethal than a BJP which has crossed 272. So at 240, the opposition and probably many critics abroad would try to project that Modi is now weak. And so therefore, I personally believe that in the next 1.5 years at least, you would see very, very strong decisions being taken to break that jinx, to break that perception that the opposition would try to create. And at the same time, to also gain back the vote base that perhaps for certain reasons did not vote for BJP, especially in Uttar Pradesh. And as Gautam ji mentioned rightly, that thing has to be fixed, what happened wrong. So far as, say, issues of defense, Atmanirbharta is concerned, or, as through production-linked incentive, creating India a major manufacturing hub and a very critical part of the global resilient supply chain, I think the reforms will continue. I think it will be much easier than what it was in case of Prime Minister Vajpayee. In spite of a fragile coalition which Vajpayee ji was running, he brought in the Electricity Act, he brought in Telecom Regulatory Authority, he liberalized the aviation sector, and as mentioned earlier, the entire revolution in the road. So from my understanding, the economic reforms will possibly be, deepened. I would love to see some reforms in the electricity sector, whether this government can bring in reforms in that Electricity Act, because this whole populism wherein the state electricity boards buy electricity, gives it free of cost to most, and then the power producers are almost on the verge of bankruptcy because nobody pays them. So there is an issue with that. A country which is, aiming to become a $5 trillion economy in the next few years, which would be entirely dependent on electricity, if the power producers have a huge problem, because they produce power, they sell it to the state electricity board, they don't get paid, then the banks hound these power producers because they're not being able to repay the loans they have taken from the banks. So I think that is one issue that needs to be corrected. I don't know whether they would be able to do it this time, but they'll try definitely. Agriculture reform is something which I think should be allowed for the states to be done. This is one area where a lot of reforms are needed because agriculture does not create jobs. It requires investment. We have seen what happened in 2021-22 when the farm protest happened. For some reasons, they withdrew those bills. I don't know whether it helped them or not. But certainly, we require reforms, or otherwise the agricultural distress will continue. Remember, the service sector and the industry sector continue to drag the agriculture sector, which does not create jobs, which continue to create only disguised unemployment, which doesn't have a market model at all. Apart from that, I think bureaucratic reforms would be very much needed. We require people with domain expertise. I mean, the generalist Babu culture is not going to help anymore. It is not helping. So whether, again, this is one area whether reforms will be able to be pushed through or not, I don't know. But the next generation reforms, the next generation growth would require, I am not saying bureaucracy should be sidelined. I'm saying people should come with a certain domain, stay in that domain, gain expertise, and continue pushing the reform. That is something I'm looking forward. See, it has been rightly mentioned that, when you have 240 seats, you are there. It is not that difficult to cross the majority mark. When it comes to issues like Uniform Civil Code, which was one of the pet projects of BJP, I think it is not possible anymore right now to be done with it through the central government, at least for the next few years. But it can be done through the states. Uttarakhand, if it can do it, it can be done by Odisha, it can be done by Madhya Pradesh, it can be done by others. I don't know whether populism or freebie culture will have any kind of reform or not, but that is killing. That is having a destructive impact on the society, on the country. Either it has to be completely reformed, refined with accountability, or unfortunately, I might be politically correct. Then if it is not corrected, then I think the party in power in center must also have to do the same thing. In many parts, it is the freebie culture which actually won over good governance. Let me tell you, Bengal is a classic example where Lakshmi Bhandar actually played havoc. It is the reason why people voted for TMC. No ifs and buts. So when it comes to defense or foreign policy, when it comes to economic reforms, I don't think there will be any stoppage. Prime Minister Modi will continue with those things. When it comes to deep tech startups, when it comes to funding startups, all those things are not an issue. Structural reforms in bureaucracy, if it happens, it's good. Contentious issues like Uniform Civil Code or reform in work board, whether it can happen, only time will say. But I must say one thing, Vineet, it's very interesting. Look at it. The delimitation would happen post 226 onward. By 2027, this country would have 753 seats. And I don't think Prime Minister Modi would run a lame duck government for 5 years. I think his objective will be to perform in 3 years and then probably, go for election again, because in 2027, a state like UP itself would have 140 seats instead of 80. So they have to do course correction in UP. Whatever we are hearing from all sides about certain issues, which I don't want to talk about right now, those have to be mended and they have to go ahead again. One thing is very clear, Vineet. This is the bottom that perhaps BJP has touched for the time being. And I think as a party, they are very self-critical. I'm sure they will do introspection and move ahead. However, one thing is very for sure, do not take the opposition for granted. Do not say that it's weak. And foreign interference in this election is a reality. It did work out. It did impact. Disinformation through social media did impact people. Whether we would have some kind of a legislation to prosecute or have some kind of a foreign interference prevention act or something like that, it would be interesting to see. Because if you could not stop it in 2024, then in 2027 or 2029, the proliferation of smartphone will go even more. How would you prevent it then? You cannot completely firewall and say, I'm banning social media. But eventually, Vineet, if this country has to be eventually sovereign in every perspective, tech sovereignty is equally important. It is not just about manufacturing mobile phones or electronic gadgets like laptop, which is equally important. But you need to have your own search engine. You need to have your own social media apps. You need to have your own operating system, which we haven't done for a long time. And there has to be accountability of all those companies based in the West and operating here in the social media domain, and whether they have played with algorithms to push certain narratives and restrict certain narratives. Where if we can't deal with that issue, then foreign interference in future elections is only going to rise.
Let me in fact take a response from Professor Nalapat on the foreign interference bit that you have brought up, Pathakrit. Obviously, there is a lot of chatter about it. Officially, there's not been much of a confirmation on what really this foreign interference is all about. But Professor Nalapat, Prime Minister Modi definitely will pay heed to this threat as well.
Look, I would like to say that that I am not in favor of penal measures. I'm generally not in favor of prosecutions. I'm generally not in favor of sending people to jail. And I'm generally not in favor of expanding the number of laws that we already have, because generally we find that these laws are ineffective. And as a consequence, for example, where social media is concerned, look, it has been clear for the last 2 or 3 years that in the 2024 campaign, there's going to be a huge effort to unseat Prime Minister Modi. It was there in plain view, in bold letters, a mile high. And I think a smart party like the BJP will have to understand that threat and take action against it in a smart manner. You can't do it through law and through legislation, because social media will then creep in. Xi Jinping could not do it, And if Xi Jinping with his system cannot do it, it's not going to happen in India. So I want to say that Prime Minister Modi is completely focused on making India tech superpower and tech self-sufficient. I'll give you an example. He has sent a reply to a tweet, a congratulatory tweet from the president of Taiwan, Lai Ching-te. This is unprecedented that the Prime Minister of the world's greatest democracy is sending a reply to the Taiwanese president, freely elected by the people. Taiwan is a small island democracy in a sea of dictatorship on the other side. So why? Because Taiwan is important. It's important for us, important for tech, whether it's Startup India, whether it's Tech India, whether it is other initiatives. Now defense. You can say that defense is an expense. The fact is, defense can be made very profitable.
All right.
There are many countries that are exporting defense, making a lot of money out of that. Look at France, for example. Look at Britain. Huge amount of money. And I think the Prime Minister is set to do the same thing. I don't believe he's going to face serious opposition from within the NDA for any of these measures, because you have reformists very, very much there, across the spectrum there. And I would like to say, Vineet, I'm very optimistic that the growth trajectory will rise, because it's in the interest of everybody in the NDA. And I'm not going to say it's going to last for 2.5 years or 3 years, or there's some secret master plan to have elections in 3 years. Frankly, I think, in my view, the aim is to have a full, stable coalition for 5 years, and preferably a bigger coalition with more parties. This snap election kind of thing, I don't buy into that logic. In my view, according to my information, the intention is a full 5 years of the Prime Minister and his coalition partners and the members of Parliament of the BJP.
All right, sir. Appreciate your thoughts and appreciate the clarity that you have also lent to this debate. We've run out of time. Unfortunately, would have loved to accommodate everybody else's opinions as well. We take a short break here. Be right back.